Hello, welcome back to Big LEZ'S League and all rugby league experience. I'm your host, Big Les. Obviously, a lot happening in the NRL at the moment, but we thought we would jump in and get stuck into every NRL team's biggest question. And who better to do that with than Jarrod from the Strictly Footy podcast. Jarrod, how you doing, brother?
Mate, I am so happy to be back. It's always good being on this podcast. Done a few now, loving it. Get some good content out.
Exactly, mate, exactly. So we'll get stuck into every team's biggest question, but first, obviously fresh this morning at time of recording was the Origin eligibility changes. So there's a couple of new players that are now eligible to play State of Origin footy. In particular, Victor Radley can play for New South Wales. Addin Fonua-Blake can play for New South Wales. Britt Nikora, we're not too sure yet. My mail is that he can play for Queensland. Everyone else is saying New South Wales, so we'll see who's right in the end there. Casey McLean, he can play for New South Wales. Isaiah Katoa can obviously play for New South Wales. He was picked in the squad anyway, so that doesn't really affect too much. AJ Brimson can play for Queensland. Phoenix Crossland can play for New South Wales. Jeremy Marshall-King can play for New South Wales. Dallin Watene-Zelezniak can play for New South Wales. And Jason Taumalolo can play for Queensland. Dylan Brown only missed out by 2 years to being eligible for New South Wales. Jerome Hughes only missed out by, I think it was 2 years to be eligible for Queensland. And I think as well, Herbie Farnworth missed out by 4 years to be eligible for Queensland as well, which would have been an absolute fucking nightmare if Herbie Farnworth was ending up eligible for Queensland, because he'd be straight in that side, no questions about it. But mate, your thoughts, let me know what you think. What are you thinking about the Origin eligibility? Is it the right move for the NRL to go down that sort of direction?
Look, I love the change. I think Samoa and Tonga have been catching up for years now, and I think it just makes sense to be able to represent your state and your heritage. I've spoken to a few rugby league players now that, are eligible for New South Wales and Queensland, but have chosen to sorry, I got something in my eye. Move on to a different nation, and the way they still talk about New South Wales is insane. So I think you can have that Origin eligibility, love for New South Wales, love for Queensland, but still move on.
Yeah, well, look, I think it is the right move, as you were sort of alluding to there. I think that you look at the landscape of the game at the moment as well. It's changing. You're getting players that are eligible for multiple different things, and you want to leave the door open for those younger guys like your Casey McLean's. I think is a perfect example. Played in all of the under-19s and obviously the junior representative squads for New South Wales, but also has ties to New Zealand as well. So you want to leave the door open for these sort of guys to play both. And, they've got a lot of old school people coming on and saying, look, if you play for New Zealand, you shouldn't be able to play for Queensland or New South Wales. If you play for any of these other states and countries other than Australia, you shouldn't be able to play for New South Wales or Queensland. I think it's a really outdated opinion now, especially with the landscape of the game. Majority of the game and majority of its players being of Polynesian descent. And that's only growing. It's not getting any smaller. So I think we need to move with the times a little bit there. And we need to leave the door open for those sort of guys. And, even for a guy like Victor Radley, grew up his whole life mostly in Bronte as well. Like, he's pure New South Wales as it gets. As an Origin player as well, he's probably one of the better Origin players that can't play State of Origin, and now he can. So I think it's great. Let's move on, though, because this isn't an Origin podcast. This is a Every Team's Biggest Question podcast. Let's get stuck straight into it, mate. So we'll start off with the Newcastle Knights. What is Newcastle's biggest question heading into season 2026?
I think Newcastle's biggest question heading into 2026 is how Dylan Brown goes running this team. I think he's been next to Mitchell Moses throughout most of his career, and that's where he's succeeded most. So sticking him next to a more inexperienced half in either, Sandon Smith, Fletcher Sharp, I think he'll be a huge part of their success in 2026.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Dylan Brown, obviously how he goes in this team. The trials probably wasn't the greatest indication. Hopefully it pans out a lot better than that for Newcastle this year. But I think that Dylan Brown's going to make a huge impact. I just want to see him at 6. I want to see him at 6. I want to see Sandon Smith at 7. Dylan Brown playing the left-hand side of the field where he does his best work and as more comfortable. And that's what I want to see from Newcastle. I know that Fletcher Sharps, you've got it in there as well. You need to fit him in somewhere. KP, you need to fit him in somewhere. But for me, I think the halves, you need to stay with a out-and-out halfback, which, I guess Newcastle haven't really had for the past couple of years as well. They've been chopping and changing their halves for the past 3 years. Now that you've got an out-and-out halfback and one of the game's best 5'8", you should stick with them and not try to overcomplicate everything, because it's only going to lead to, a bit of dysfunction around the side as well and how they play. So I think that definitely the halves, I guess, in general, is probably the biggest question for Newcastle heading into this year. Let's go down to the next team, which is the New Zealand Warriors, mate. What have you got down for their biggest question mark for season 2026?
I think we might differ here, but last season we saw a considerable drop-off once Metcalf got injured, in my opinion. So I think Will Metcalf hit the ground running coming back from the ACL injury. They'll miss him to start the season. I think they could struggle a little bit, but if he comes back into this side, they shouldn't have too many issues making the eight.
I agree, to be fair. I agree with what you said there. I think that there was definitely a drop-off. Luke Metcalf was on track to be the Dally M Player of the Year before his injury as well. The points certainly show you that. So I think that him obviously coming out of that side, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how he comes back for sure. I think Chanel Aristeveta did a pretty solid job while Metcalf was out, but Metcalf does make a huge difference when he's in there. Very talented number 7, and you could tell as well when Chanel and Metcalf were playing together that they were just on the borderline of creating a really, really nice halves pairing, and a really pretty dangerous one as well. They've got one of the best forward packs in the comp this year as well, the New Zealand Warriors. My, I guess, biggest question with them is do they back in their youth now, or do they stick with their experience? You've got guys like Kurt Capewell, you've got guys like Murata Niukore, these sort of guys, some older heads in and around the pack. Do you back them in, or do you back in your youth, like your Dimitri Valmungas, your Leka Halasemas, these sort of guys? Do you just lock all of these young guys in? They've got plenty of juniors as well that played in the trials that looked quite good. You got to fit Jacob Laban in somewhere. These sort of guys are fighting for spots. So my big question, I guess, is do you back them in? But I also had written down here Luke Metcalf. His ceiling as well, is it good enough to make them a serious finals threat as well for season 2026? I think he can. But I think my bigger question from a general piece for the Warriors would probably be in and around their pack. Are you sort of in the same boat there? Like, what if you're the Warriors, are you going to back in the young guys in, or are you giving guys like Murata Niukore and your Kurt Capewells in there for the experience?
I've always kind of been of the opinion that if you're not challenging for a title, you'd back your young guys in, especially if there's not too much of kind of a skill gap. I think I'd probably be going, your Leka Halasemas, your Waimungas, getting minutes into them. Tuapiki and Chance is a little bit of a harder one, I think. I think Chance has been serviceable for them for a while. But yeah, I've always kind of been of the opinion that get your youth in early, especially if you're not competing for a title. Let them go together so that when the peak happens, all those young guys, especially in key positions, are ready to go.
100%. Like, you've even got guys like young Ali Leotawa, who's quite versatile, that will probably be fighting for a centre spot in there with Rocco Berry and a ton of injuries. Tane Tuapiki is the interesting one. I think with Chance, though, defensively, like, he's saved them in a lot of games with his defence. I think that you've definitely got to stick with Chance. I'd be having him at fullback. I think more of the question mark will be around Dallin Watene-Zelezniak. I think that his defence last year was a little bit of a concern, and there was a lot of people calling for Dallin Watene-Zelezniak to be dropped. I think that he'll be a big watch to start the season. If he doesn't start red hot, and defensively, if there are still a few issues there, then I think that Tane Tuapiki, that's probably his pathway into the side, maybe on a wing spot, like he played a couple of times last year as well. Are you in the similar sort of boat?
You got someone like AKP there too, as well.
Yeah, yep.
Roger probably locking down one wing, so definitely some iron sharpens iron situations going on over there.
100%, 100%. All right, the Sydney Roosters. What is their biggest question going into season 2026?
I think they've got some of the best depth in the comp, but my question is there too many chefs in the kitchen? DCE's going over there, someone who loves having the ball in his hands, someone who loves controlling the game. Sammy Walker's over there. You got guys like James Tedesco. I just think there's a lot of players that need the ball in their hands, and in past for the Roosters, that has caused them to struggle a little bit. I think if they can get over that, they'll be contenders for sure. But that's my biggest question heading into 2026.
Yeah, look, I'm pretty much copy and paste with exactly everything you've just said. Too many chefs in the kitchen. Is that going to be a problem for the Sydney Roosters? You've got Teddy, who loves to get his hands on the footy. DCE, obviously, coming over from a side where he was the controlling halfback, where he was the main guy in that team. He's now coming into a side where he's not. Realistically, you've got Sam Walker there. You've got one of the better nines in the competition who's playing State of Origin at the moment, and Reece Robson in that role. Obviously, Connor Watson there at 13, you'd think, as well. So there are plenty of chefs in the kitchen at the Sydney Roosters. The big question is, can they make it work? I think, to be fair, they can. They're a big attacking outfit. If they can shore up their defence on their edges, I think that they are definitely a side where they can make it work. I think that DCE knows his role, and we've been training all preseason with Sam Walker. He'd know the fact that he'd probably need to take a little bit of a backward step, a little bit of a back seat, let Sam Walker develop. So I think that they can make it work, but it will be an interesting watch in the opening games of the season, that's for sure. Not too much else, I guess, for the Sydney Roosters. The only other thing I had down there, which was an extension of, I guess, too many chefs in the kitchen, is can DCE take that backward step? Can he take that back seat and allow Sam Walker to obviously take control of the side? Do you reckon he can?
I think he can. The issue is he's never really had to do it in his whole career. So may take a few weeks to get used to, but I think in the end it'll just naturally happen.
Yep, for sure. Parramatta, what's their biggest question heading into this year? You're looking at their side. Obviously, they've got Moses, they've got Pezzett in there, two bona fide halfbacks. I guess that's the biggest question, I guess, for me at least. I'm not sure if you differ from that, but I think that probably the halves would be my biggest question. Can they make it work with two number sevens? What is your biggest question for them?
Similar kind of boat. Mine was more just, does Mitchell Moses stay fit? I think that's the biggest thing for their season. If he's injured like he has been the last two seasons, I know they've got Pezzett. I know he's a bit of an upgrade on the backups they've had in past, but yeah, I think Moses being fit is essential for them making a push for the 8, maybe even the 4.
Yeah, mate, I'm not too sure if you've been watching On the Burst, the show that I was doing with Brandon Savage from the Supercoach Experience, but I've made a big call early to throw Parramatta into my top 4. I think they can be a top 4 side. I think Pezzett and Moses, they can work it out. I think the fact that you've got two really good kickers of the footy as well, two really good last tackle options, it's going to be really hard for teams to pick who's getting the ball, really hard for teams to really guard both of them. They're both very good runners. It's almost like they've cloned Mitch Moses, made him a little bit younger and thrown him at 5'8". I think that that's what you're going to get from Jonah Pezzett. I guess you look at Moses in his West Tigers days next to Luke Brooks. I think that's probably what you're going to get here from Jonah Pezzett. So I think that they can make that work. The other question I had here was, are they good enough to contend with Storm, Broncos and Panthers is my thing, because I've got them in the top 4. Are they good enough to compete with those top sides? What are your thoughts come September?
I think their spine is a little bit too inexperienced. Iongi going into his second year. Riley Smith really only going into his second year. Pezzett really only his first year as a full-time first grader. So I think the spine is a little bit inexperienced, but we've seen it happen before where inexperienced sides have gone on grand final runs. So I can see it happening, but at this stage I'm going to say unlikely.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see. I think that they probably do, but I'm not sure if they win. I don't know how deep they're going into finals, but I do look at them as a top 4 side if they can put everything together. Speaking of Western Sydney, mate, the Penrith Panthers. What is their biggest question mark heading into season 2026?
It's very difficult to come up with a question for them because they're such a solid side, but I think it's just, I know it sounds basic, but can they bounce back from last season? They've had to throw in a bunch of youth players that all kind of hit their straps towards the end of last year. Can they now back it up? We hear about second season syndrome every now and then. Hoping it doesn't happen for Penrith, but that's kind of my question around Penrith.
Yeah, look, I can definitely agree. Obviously last year would have hit them hard for a lot of those young guys. It's the first year that they haven't made the grand final and haven't won one. So it definitely would have been a little bit of a check to the ego. But not even that, but more so it would have been a bit of a strange feeling for that to happen. So I think that's obviously a big thing as well. How do they sort of bounce back from that? How does the likes of Cleary and Yo, the leaders in this side, sort of turn things around and get them focused in for a big season in season 2026? In regards to my question marks for them, I guess just off the back of that, actually, the big thing for Penrith is that this is the first year that no one massive is leaving. Like, they've had Luai leave, they've had Critter leave, they've had Kickow leave in the space of time that they've won these premierships. This is the first year that a big player isn't leaving the club and there's not mass changes. So I think that's a big positive heading for Penrith heading into this year, I should say. My big question is the draw to start the year. Is the draw to start the year for Penrith going to be too much for them? Because they've got, let me just get the draw up here, but they have got... Let's have a look. Why is it still showing the preseason? Penrith. They have got Brisbane, Sharks, Roosters, Eels, Storm, Dogs. That's their first 6 games. So that draw is gnarly. They then have the Dolphins after that. They don't have a let-up until round 8, and they don't have a bye until round 12. So I think that draw is going to be really hectic for Penrith. And we look at even last year when, the draw wasn't as severe, I guess, for them last year, and they still managed to obviously go down and have the spoon in their hands by round 13 or 14. So they don't have a let-up game or a bye until round 12. They've got pretty much full top 8 sides for the first 6 games of the year. That draw is going to be pretty hectic for them. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think especially if they do lose a couple of games at the start of the year, that then stops them from having the luxury of resting over Origin and just resting throughout the season, not bringing players back from injury too early, giving them a few extra weeks to recover. So I think that actually cost them at the end of last year, because in the prelim they had Brisbane on the ropes, and then Brisbane just kind of out-fitnessed them towards the end, came back. So yeah, I think it could be an issue, but knowing Penrith, I think they'll just bounce back. They'll come out of that all right and go from there.
I'm sure you're right. Melbourne, mate. What's Melbourne's biggest question mark heading into this year?
Melbourne's biggest question mark heading into this year, I think it's quite simple. How are they going to overcome the losses of both Ryan Papenhuyzen and Eli Katoa? It's a lot of star power. They're being replaced by not bad players, but inexperienced players, and I think it could cause a bit of havoc.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's good as well. I think that you look at their losses, particularly Ryan Papenhuyzen there at fullback, how good he was. You're getting Su'Fa'alonga, who's a great player and has come in and had some unbelievable games, but he's unproven at fullback full time. So that's obviously going to be the big question mark. How is Su'Fa'alonga going to come in and play? Eli Katoa is a big loss as well. It's one they probably wouldn't have expected to lose for this year with the concussion. He is training now and he's looking good. So that's obviously a positive there in regards to his chances of playing next year. Obviously with head injuries, you really can't tell until he sits down with the GP and they sort of discuss it further. But it's a big loss for this year. Again, they've got a young guy and probably Atavalo Lasardi hopping into that role, who, again, is just a guy that is still quite young, still unproven in the NRL across a long stretch of games. So that's obviously going to be a big one as well, how they sort of overcome those, but more so how they overcome the losses of 2 back-to-back grand finals. And their side hasn't improved since then either. Like, their side hasn't gotten better since that last grand final loss. They haven't recruited anyone unbelievable unless they get Lomax, which by the day looks more and more unlikely. They're not getting anyone that makes their side significantly better where they can just jump in and obviously fight for a premiership, or at least when they get to the grand final, be more competitive than they have been. So that's probably the biggest question mark for me, how they sort of bounce back from those back-to-back grand final losses. Jarrod, the question I've got for you, I guess, off the back of that is the Melbourne Storm in your grand final this year?
I don't think they are. And it might be a hot take, but I think losses of Paps and Ellie, as I said, huge. I think they've lost a couple of important depth pieces. Jonah Pezzett's gone. Grant Anderson's gone. Wishart is not gone for this year, but he's off to the Bears the year after. I think there's a genuine argument to be made that Wishart might be their backup currently in almost every position, except prop.
Yeah, It pretty much is. It pretty much is. They've recruited young Manaia Wateti from Canberra, who's quite good. He trialled the other day at centre, but can play fullback and 5'8". I feel like he'll be Wishart's replacement for next year when he goes to the Bears. So they've got him. They've got Trent Tolau as well, who played 9 in the Māori All-Stars game and killed it the other day. Can obviously cover in the halves as well. So they have got a bit of cover, but even with both of those guys in there, if one of these spine players does go down, you are picking Tyron Wishart straight away because he's proven. So it's a fair shout as well. The depth is a little bit of a question mark for them if there are a number of injuries, like if Hughes and Munster go down at the same time, which is very possible. All of a sudden, there's huge question marks around the Melbourne Storm. So, yeah, I think that injuries and their depth, but also Suafa'alongo, how he goes at fullback, and how they recover from back-to-back grand final losses is obviously one of their questions as well. Mate, the St George Illawarra Dragons obviously lost to a reserve grade South Sydney side in the trials the other day, which I'm very happy about as a South fan. But what are your thoughts on the Dragons? What is their biggest question mark heading into this year?
I think it's their forward pack. A lot of people are going to go to their half straight away, but from what I saw in that trial, they're struggling for go forward. They've got Koloamatangi coming in 2027. That'll help immensely. But for now, they've got a ton of hard workers, but I'm not seeing where they're getting their go forward from in their forward pack, and that in turn is going to hurt a halves pairing that's already under a lot of pressure.
Well, I mean, they've got a pretty decent pack. They struggled on the weekend, which I'm pretty shocked about, to be fair. Like Toby Couchman, I thought played okay. I thought Hamish Stewart was probably the better one of their players as well. I think that he looked the best out of the trial, other than Setu too. But yeah, I think you're right. Go forward will be a little bit of an issue compared to some of these top packs, and if they even get close to the 8 and they're fighting for spots, how are they going to compete against these other fringe sides who have some really great forward packs in Canberra, the Dogs, these sort of sides? How do they compete there? That's going to be a huge question. Yeah, for me, I think it's the halves though. I think Daniel Atkinson, particularly after the weekend, and Kyle Flanagan. They combined okay for the first 10-15 minutes, but it sort of went pear-shaped after that, and they didn't really have any plans. It was a lot of unders balls, which you're probably more likely to see in the charity match, I thought at least, than you are to see in the NRL. But yeah, it was a lot of unders balls, a lot of, I guess, under-8s plays, which was a little bit confusing. But you know, you've got Daniel Atkinson, who's getting used to that 7 position. You've got Kyle Flanagan, who I think is definitely more of a 6. But I guess the question mark around Flano is, you know, is he going to be able to play 6 with Daniel Atkinson at 7? We'll have to wait and see over the first couple of games. I wouldn't read too much into the trials either, as much as I've talked about them. And obviously we're taking a lot of information already from the trials. I wouldn't read into it too much, but at the same time, you can definitely read into it a little bit, considering they had their full first grade side out there. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to go forward this year. But yeah, my question mark's definitely more around the halves, and I guess the errors as well. We were sort of talking about the unders balls and how they were playing on the weekend. They made a fuck ton of errors as well, off the back of some of their plays. So can they keep the errors down on a low, but while also taking more risks, like Damien Cook was sort of alluding to earlier in the preseason? I guess that's my question as well. How quickly are you bringing in a guy like Cade Reid, who I guess out of the Dragons halves was probably the standout?
It depends on his defense. I don't think I got to see a lot of his defense in the trial. But my answer is, if they're not looking like they're competing for an 8 spot, I'd be bringing Cade Reid in pretty quick if it seems like there's an issue with the halves.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see. They've obviously got Like and King Tonga there as well, who defensively isn't great. I probably wouldn't be chucking him in straight away, but yeah, I mean, they probably wish they would have kept Ilias, to be fair. Let's move on to the Manly Seagulls. Your side, mate. What's the biggest question around the Manly Seagulls this year?
I think our biggest questions around the forward pack. We got Paseka back, signed Kobe Hetherington, done a few good things with the juniors, as we saw in trials this week. Are they going to be up to standard? Because the last few seasons we've had a lot of big players that haven't been able to go the distance really, and our forward pack has just been rolled, which hasn't allowed for our elite backs to do amazing things like we know they can. Tolu Kola, Tom Trebojevic, Saab, Garrick, Lehigh Hopewadi. It's stacked at the back there. I think the forward pack needs to get going, and I think it's probably the most important issue at Manly at the moment.
I'll tell you what, though, we talk about the forward pack being an issue. Simeone Lafai, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Holy shit.
I think it's Laifi.
Laifi? Holy moly. 181 metres run on the weekend against the Warriors. Paul Bryan ran for 105. Corey Waddell ran for 200 metres. Albeit it was against a reserve grade Warriors pack. But, geez, there's some positive signs there for some of the young guns coming through.
Absolutely. Caleb Navale as well was going to be another one. Unfortunately, he went down with an ACL injury. They got David Mawali coming in next season after a stint at the Storm this year. So, decent signs, but I think still for this season, if they're going to compete for even an 8 spot, the forward pack needs to be on it.
Speaking similar to the Warriors, I guess, are you backing in some of these younger guys like your Viliami Fafitas, your Laifis, obviously your Paul Bryans you got from Newcastle? Are you going to back these guys in early?
Laifi, I would, based off that trial. He's looking like a monster. Was 18th man a couple of times last year, so was close to making a debut. When it comes to Viliami Fafita and stuff, I think they might just have to bide their time for a little bit. Obviously, Paseka's there, Gerbo's there, Kobe Hetherington's there, Bullimore's there. So there's just guys that probably aren't going to be giving up their position just yet. But again, iron sharpens iron. If they're putting pressure on those positions, then it's going to be good for everybody. You
still got Takiaho, who you've extended for an extra year as well. So
sure.
To be fair, like the pack's not looking too bad. I think it's more so how much go forward are you getting from this pack? How's Gerbo looking? Those sort of things as well, I think would be the questions around the pack. My sort of question would be on Jamal Fogarty. How much is the style of footy going to change with Jamal Fogarty coming in? Is it going to be better? Is it going to be worse? And then Luke Brooks as well. We were sort of talking on the burst the other day, myself and Sav, regarding Luke Brooks and maybe if there is a chance that he might get dropped down to maybe an 18-19 spot and we see Joey Walsh get backed in at 6. I think there's every possibility by round 8 if Manly aren't ticking that happens. What are your thoughts?
On Joey Walsh or Jamal Fogarty, mostly?
On both, either or.
I would be getting Joey Walsh in. It's the theme of my opinions, it seems like. If we're not competing for a title, get Joey Walsh, get the young players in. I don't think Joey Walsh would drop too much quality from Luke Brooks, so I don't think we're taking too much of a hit there. And I just think he's touted as our future 7. Why not get him 3 years of first grade footy before he has to take over the side where he's not even the leader of the halves. He can just kind of roam around, do his own thing, learn off Jamal Fogarty. I think that's definitely the best option for Manly. As for Fogarty, I think it could go well under Anthony Seibold. He seems to be more of a structured kind of coach, and I think Fogarty suits that much more than Cherry Evans does. I think it'll get Turbo more ball if he's fit. So I like the Fogarty signing. I think it'll be good.
Yeah, well, look, we'll have to wait and see. I'll tell you what, talking of Seibold, he definitely is a big shirtless meditation guy, as per a couple of photos that we've seen. But, yeah, look, I'm keen. I'm very keen to see how Manly go. I do have a couple of questions around them, obviously, with the halves, and you were talking about the forward pack. I guess the last one before we move on is Tom Trbojevic, right? His injuries. If this side has injuries with Tom Trbojevic, you probably don't make finals. If Tom Trbojevic is fit and firing, you probably are close to finals. So I think a lot rests on Tom Trbojevic and his health, I guess. Are you in the same sort of boat?
Yeah, I think so. 100% when it comes to making the 8, Turbo needs to be fit. Otherwise, look, I know Cola's a good fullback, Hopewadi's a good fullback, but we're probably not challenging for the 8 if Turbo's not there.
All right, Gold Coast Titans. What is the biggest question mark around the Titans? I know that there's probably a couple.
I think it's the halves. I've been quite outspoken about the fact that I don't think a Brimson-Campbell halves combination works. I think they're both two really, really good players on their day, but I think they lose out on a lot of game management. I think it's a lot of unstructured play, which can work sometimes and can get you a few, 42-24 wins, as in the scoreline. But I think when it comes to playing the bigger teams, you need that game management there.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. I think that is definitely the case. You need a leader in there. You've got Lockie Ilias in jersey 7. I guess for Q Cup, it's going to seem like now, but I'll tell you what, I'd be bringing him in. I would 100% be bringing him in. I'd have Jaden Campbell 6. I'd have Lockie Ilias 7. AJ Brimson, I'd probably have him in the centres, considering the depth in the back line. You'd move a guy like Philip Sami out to the wing. All of a sudden, it's looking like a much better and much stronger outfit. If there's one injury in the back line, the Titans are screwed, really. Or 1 or 2 injuries in the back line, the Titans are absolutely screwed. They're going to have to get exemptions to bring guys in from development contracts just to fill a team. So I am a little bit concerned. I'd hate to see Bo Firma used as a centre a numerous amount of times throughout the year as well. So I think their depth in the back line is probably a big question for me, but definitely the halves and how their makeup is there. I'd be bringing Lockie Ilias in, to be fair, but at the same time, I think my question isn't really Jaden Campbell 7. My question is AJ at 6, because they don't really get a kicking game out of AJ Brimson. Jaden Campbell's going to have to be doing majority of the kicking. Jaden Campbell doesn't really have a long kicking game anyway. So they're sort of kicking themselves in the crotch a little bit with that. But yeah, look, it'll be interesting to see what they do, I guess. It'll be interesting to see how long it takes or how long they give Jaden Campbell and AJ before they do make a change there. What are your thoughts? Would you bring Lockie in?
100%. I'd be having Lockie Ilias at halfback, Jaden Campbell 6, and Brimo in the centres. He's been quite outspoken. He doesn't want to play in the centres, but I just don't know what else you can do. The back line looks very thin there. You get, I still think, a decent version of AJ Brimson at the centres, albeit probably not his best, but that's the reality when you have 3 natural fullbacks in one team.
Yeah, 100%. I guess the last question I have for the Titans is the forward pack, because Jamin Joloff's just done his ACL. He's going to be out for the season. So they've got a pretty light pack, to be fair. Very small pack. Klesser Haas, Curtis Moran, Mo Fodawaker, Cooper Bai, and then Tino. We've obviously got Chris Randall, who's most likely going to be playing middle as well, according to Josh Hannay. So it's a very light pack. How much pressure is going to be on Tino this year? And how many is Tino going to have to play 80 minutes a game just so they can have momentum through the middle? I don't like that, really, for the Titans. I think guys like Mo Fodawaker and some other guys are really going to have to stand up this year if the Titans are to be successful, because if Tino has to play 80 minutes a week and then all of a sudden he gets injured, they're screwed. Absolutely screwed. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. If Tino gets injured, they're screwed. I think some of these young guys are going to stand up a little bit, though. I think Cooper Bai, especially, I think will be an absolute gun this year. Fodawaker's an origin level player. I think Chris Randall's going to play more of that link man 13 role to start the year. And then you've just got workers like Curtis Moran coming off the bench. And there's a few guys there that, well, I mean, we hear training the house down a lot, so it may be true, it may not be, but Arama Howe's been doing good things. Paxton in the back row, Cleese Haas. I think they should be okay if they stay healthy, but yeah, a few injuries and that forward pack, again, is looking weak.
All right, now on to my team, the South Sydney Rabbitohs. What is the biggest question mark around the Bunnies going into this year?
I think they've got the power to do it. I think the spine, if Cody Walker goes down, is where I'm a little bit worried. Brandon Smith, Mamazelis, Jai Gray, who are your Harsby? Jamie Humphries, and then whoever the 6 is going to be in the event that Walker goes down. Would it be Ward, Sullivan?
So we'll need to get an exemption for Ward, but I think we're going to be doing that anyway, because my mail is because Glover's broken his jaw, that we're going to go with Ashton Ward to start the year at halfback. So we'll wait and see if there's any truth to that. I'd probably be leaning more towards Cody Walker, Jack Whiten to start the year, because it's only going to be for 1 to 2 games. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Glover's broken his jaw. Humphries is suspended for the first 1 or 2 games. Yeah, look, it's going to be interesting, the halves this year. It's going to be really, really interesting to see what South Sydney do. I'd have Glover when he gets back. I think that he's super talented. I think we saw in the opening exchanges of that Charity Shield, his kicking game is unbelievable. If you've watched his highlights in the lower grades, very, very good. Run first, number 7. Really good defender, but his kicking game is enormous as well. Kicks really, really well. So Jonah Glover for me would be the 7 when he gets back, with Cody Walker at 6. but we'll have to obviously wait and see what the go is with Glover, how long he's going to be out for, and depends if Jamie Humphries kills it while Glover's out when he gets back from suspension. Maybe Jamie Humphries is the option there. They've also got Matty Humphries, no relations to Jamie Humphries, but obviously a good little number 7 that we've got at South Sydney as well. So yeah, look, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the halves this year. Does Latrell maybe move into 5'8" if things aren't working out? That's obviously been thrown up by a few people. I don't think he does. I think he's the game's best centre. Let's leave him in the centres. But it will be interesting to see what they do, I guess, with the halves. That's probably my biggest question around them too. Who is their halfback? Bud Sullivan's actually got an infection in his knee as well from the break from last year. So he's going to be out for the next couple of weeks too. So in a bit of Barney to start the year, the Bunnies, in regards to their halves depth, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. I guess the bigger question is the injuries, right? Are they going to have another year affected by injury? If they do, then it's going to be a rough one. If they don't, they're a top 8, potentially a top 4 side with the talent that they've got in this roster. What are your thoughts?
I think the forward pack is looking quite strong in terms of forward depth for this season. I think it's going to be more if there's a few injuries in the spine. I think Latrell goes to fullback if Gray goes down, sure. The halves are the main one that you were talking about before. I think they're very inexperienced halves if Cody Walker's not there and you want to keep White in the centres. Brandon Smith, Mamazelis, your next nine's probably Gray, would I say?
They've got Mamazelis, they've got Brandon Smith. Yeah, they've got Bronson Garlick. Yeah, Bronson Garlick's there. Who else have we got for nines? We did have Sonny Luke, and then he went to the Cowboys. Yeah, so a little bit light on there as well, I guess. But yeah, Brandon Smith and Bronson Garlick can do a role. Can play that role if Mamo goes down. So not too bad for 9. I think, yeah, halves is probably the bigger concern. But again, Latrell Mitchell can just hop in there for a little bit and do some pretty incredible things too. So I'm not overly concerned on it. I do think that the forwards will be interesting. Do they back in some of the younger guys? Dave Fafita, does he play the full game on the left edge back row? Does Tallis Duncan come in and play a bit of time there? I mean, after the Indigenous All-Stars game, you'd have to think that Tallis will get some time at left back row. But we'll have to obviously wait and see. Anything else on South Sydney, mate?
No, not really. I think you covered it well.
All right, sweet. Canberra. What are the big question marks around Canberra for this year, mate?
I think it's very obvious. How much do they lose with Fogarty on the outer? Going down to a rookie halfback. I'm not sure if Ethan Sanders is actually a rookie, but it'll be his first full season in the NRL for sure. Even if they decide to go with Kobe Black throughout the season, I just think it's inexperienced. Dane Laurie played a bit of 7 in the trials. Again, not a very experienced halfback. I think the question is definitely around, can they deal with the loss of Fogarty?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's probably the biggest one there. Kobe Black, obviously a very good young number 7, but is he ready for first grade? Some would say yes, some would say no. He's obviously going to be out, I think, for the first couple of weeks. He's got an infection in his neck or something. So he's going to be out for the first couple of weeks. Ethan Sanders is probably the bigger one for me. I think that you look at the situation at the Canberra Raiders, they've tried to recruit around him. They tried to get Jake Clifford. They tried to get Hugo Savala. They tried to go for a couple of halfbacks around Ethan Sanders because outside looking in, they probably don't think that Ethan Sanders is ready necessarily to take on that role. I know that they've sort of come out and said otherwise, but optically it doesn't look that way. So what they do there at halfback is going to be super interesting. I think that Black probably suits their style of footy better than Sanders does. I think that Sanders is too structured for what they're trying to go for. They probably want someone that's a little bit more explosive, can run the footy really well, and can suit their, I guess, off-the-cuff style of play. So whether it's Sanders can play that role or whether Black comes in by around 8-9 whenever he's back, that'll be interesting to watch as well. How much time do they give Sanders? How much time do they give Black? That's going to be the interesting watch. And are they going to have to bring someone in over the next couple of years to stand in while these guys develop? That's going to be the big one as well. But yeah, certainly how they deal with the loss of Fogarty, I think is going to be the big one. I guess the only other really big question around the Raiders would be the hooker rotation. They've got Jayden Brayley at the club. You've got Owen Paddy, who's the next best number 9 for his age group. You've got Tom Starling, who's killed it last year. My gut feeling is that it's going to be Tom Starling and Owen Paddy. But, yeah, I'm not too sure. I would have liked to have seen Jaden Brayley in the trials. The fact that Jaden Brayley didn't play in the trials and Owen Paddy did fucking scares the shit out of me. I don't know what you think, but that scares me a little bit for Canberra.
Look, you mentioned a bit about their unstructured style of play. I actually think that's why Fogarty was so important to them. The rest of their players are kind of off the cuff, unstructured. Starling, Strange, KO Weeks. I think Fogarty was the perfect halfback there because he would just pull the team into line, get the team around the park. So I actually think someone that's more structured as a halfback might be suited to them better. And I also think the same with the nine rotation. Starling was awesome last year, but I actually think Jaden Brayley could help the team more, especially seeing as now Fogarty's gone. And I also don't love the fact that Owen Paddy's playing like 20 minutes a week. I'd prefer him getting reps up in cup or at least, sharing the role with Starling a little bit more evenly.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree, to be fair. I think that this is a fast-moving, energetic side, plenty of offloads. I think that Kobe Black would probably be the guy that I'd want there at 7 just to really play that off-the-cuff style of role. And you're talking about someone leading the side at 7. I don't even know if Sanders is going to be able to do that. And maybe that's me being a little bit hypercritical on Sanders, but we'll obviously have to wait and see come round 1. Tom Starling, I just think, was so good last year in that side. Whenever they had a little half chance, he'd execute it really well. His speed out of the 9, he was outstanding last year. I'm not sure I'd be wanting to move him out. I'm not sure if I would be wanting to move Owen Paddy out either. I get the argument of getting reps in New South Wales Cup, but he played 20-odd games last year. If the plan was to get reps for him in Cup, they would have got reps for him in Cup last year. I think that he's ready for first grade. He's proved that last year, and I'm really hoping they don't move him out. I think Jaden Brayley will be a depth player until they sort of figure out what they want to do. And I think if there was any chance of Brayley playing, I think that Tom Starling would have perhaps gone elsewhere. At the end of the year, which because he was off contract, they only just re-signed him. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, but it's certainly the biggest question mark around the Canberra Raiders. North Queensland. There's plenty of question marks about North Queensland, but what's the biggest one?
Oh, man. I was tossing up between the defence and just what they end up doing with the halves. Whatever they do, I want them to stick with it, whether it's Dearden and Purdue, Dearden and Clifford. Whichever way they go with it, I think they need to stick with it for the sake of the long term because if they keep switching between the two, there's just never any continuity. And that's all.
I agree. I think the halves is going to be the biggest one, Clifford or Purdue. What they decide to do after the trials, I'd be 100% be, for me at least, it would be Clifford. I loved what I saw from Clifford in the trials. His kicking game was outstanding. Set up some really, really nice tries. If I'm picking a halves pairing for them for round 1, it is probably going to be Jake Clifford at 7 with Dearden at 6. And I'd have Purdue back in the centres. They're obviously at left centre. It sounds like Tom Chester has won the left centre spot, and that was publicised pretty publicly. So that scares me a little bit. That almost reeks of it's Purdue's jersey. And they're going to back him in regardless of form in the trials. But then I also think if that's the case, why did you play Clifford in the 7 jersey with Purdue back into the centres in that trial game against Penrith? Like, why was that the way that you guys started out? It's going to be interesting. It'll be really interesting to see what they do. Obviously, as well, Labut got the right centre jersey over Viliami Vailea as well. I don't think even Viliami Vailea featured in the trials too. So that's going to be an interesting watch. The makeup of their backline is going to be super, super interesting. But yeah, I think the main concern with North Queensland is going to be definitely the halves. Anything else on North Queensland, mate? Is there anything else there to touch on, really?
From what I've heard around the Cowboys at the moment, I've got a decent insider on it. Viliami Vailea is injured at the moment. He won't be fit to start the season. Not sure how long he's out for, though. I'm of the understanding that Purdue and Dearden were going to be the halves going into the season, hence why Tom Chester and Labut were the centres. But from what I understand, I think Clifford's done enough in trials to kind of put his name into that conversation. So I think they'll end up going with Clifford and Dearden. I think that pushes Jackson Purdue into the centres. And I think Labert has the other centre role ahead of Chester, but Labert's suspended. So I think Chester will get the Vegas right centre spot.
All right, well, there you go. A little bit of an inside scoop there from Strictly Footy Podcast. That's why you come here. Let's go. Dolphins. Mate, what a side they've got this year. The depth is outstanding. To be fair, like, I've got no questions about the Dolphins. Like, their side is almost perfect. The only, I guess, if you're nitpicking, is if they do make finals, how far into finals do they go in September? Is my biggest question around the Finns. What's your biggest question mark around them this year?
I've got kind of two, and it depends on whether Trey Fuller's at fullback or not, because Triple M posted some pretty interesting stuff that Fuller would be the fullback going forward. And if that's the case, it's, for me, the too many chefs in the kitchen argument. You got Trey Fuller needs the ball. I think if Hammer's going to be impactful at centre, he needs the ball. Herbie needs the ball. You're going to have Cobbo on the wing. He wants the ball in his hands a lot. Katoa wants the ball in his hands a lot. So I think you can make that argument there. If it is the Hammer at fullback, I think the progression of Katoa is the biggest thing for me, because if they're going to go on a deep finals run, Katoa is going to have to be at his absolute best. I think he got found out a little bit towards the end of last year, which is natural for, second, third year halves. So I think the progression of him and, adding a few more strings to his bow instead of, I think he did into the line a lot and does the same pass every time. I think they started to figure that out towards the end of last season. So I think if Katoa can progress well, the Dolphins can progress well.
Question, if Katoa does have a really strong start to the season and is a clear standout, does he make State of Origin?
I think I would, but it's just gonna be hard to go against Moses and Cleary. I think it'll be Moses and Cleary if they're healthy.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I still think he'll find himself in an extended squad like he was last year, probably 18th man. With the extended benches now, that's going to be interesting to see if they do go with a Katoa jersey 18 to bring him in. But, yeah, well, definitely a watch there. No real other questions. I think their pack depth is unbelievable. I think that their depth all around the park, maybe other than the halves, is probably really strong. The halves for me, I think definitely. You've got Kurt Donahue, but in regards to halves, I don't think there's really much else there at the moment. Avarillo you've got, but he's more of he can play a ton of different positions. Like in regards to bona fide halves, who have they got? So they've got Kurt Donahue, they've got Cody Nikorima, they've got obviously Jake Avarillo and Isaiah Katoa. They've got Brad Schneider. Okay, that's not bad. Okay, so yeah, not too bad. Not too bad across the park in regards to depth. Not bad.
I think it might be the best in the comp in terms of depth.
I think so as well.
And covering positions.
I think so as well. Like, not only versatile guys, but just really good guys that have played first grade. Like, if there's any injuries, you're not going to be too concerned with the replacement that comes in because they've had at least 20 games of first grade. So, yeah, really solid depth here at the Dolphins. Speaking of the Brisbane sides, the Brisbane Broncos, obviously the grand final winners of last season. My biggest question mark for them is probably going to be Renault and Hunt. I think obviously these guys are only getting older. For Reynolds, I think that he's going to be fine, but for Ben Hunt, is he... you've got Moser there, you've got Cameron Bukowski there, you've got some young guys that are waiting to sort of push their way in. You've also got Billy Walters, who played very well. He's 27 years of age, though. Corey Pakes played okay last year as well. Like, how long are you giving Ben Hunt? Is it Ben Hunt's last year? Renault, we know it's his last year, but Ben Hunt, does he maybe move into an 18-19 jersey? As a bit of coverage, you use him if you need him, and you're back in guys like your Moses and these sort of guys in that 9 role. And then I guess for Renault, more so the injuries. Like Renault goes down. They haven't got Pezzett this year. They haven't got Jock Madden anymore. They haven't got Kobe Black anymore. Like, if Renault goes down, there's a little bit of question marks there. But, Ben Hunt could obviously come straight in as well, I guess. So, yeah, I don't know. I still feel there's a bit of question marks in and around the spine. What about yourself?
Yeah, I'm going to copy you there with the question in and around the spine. I actually think that could be a really good use for the 18-19 role. Instead of putting a young guy there, potentially hindering his development, could put a guy like Ben Hunt there who might be in the last few seasons of his career and, just put him on if you need him, if a Reynolds gets injured mid-game, etc. As for Reynolds and Hunt, I think they kind of need to rest them throughout the season because they are starting to pick up a few knocks, a few injuries. Reynolds was in doubt for the grand final there for a while. Um, so yeah, they've got guys. Well, I mean, Hunt can sub in for Reynolds at the 7. I think Tom Duffy's over there as well if
Yeah.
they wanted to give him a go. But yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a case of keeping your players fit. I think the forward pack as well is looking a little bit thin. Kobe Hevington not there anymore. Payne Haas obviously leaving next year. So I think it is going to be keep your best players fit.
Yeah, for sure. And how they sort of go about that is going to be interesting. Like maybe against the lower sides, you give Renault a rest and you put Tom Duffy in there. Like if you were versing I hate to do this to the Titans, but the Titans, if you were versing the Titans and it was towards the back end of the year, there's no chance they're making finals, but you guys are sort of already locked in. Then maybe you played Tom Duffy in there and just give Renault a bit of a rest, but put him in jersey 18 or something. Similar for Ben Hunt throughout the year, because I think this will be Ben Hunt's last year against some of the lower sides. Maybe you back in a Pakes and a Moser, and then you have Ben Hunt in jersey 18 or 19. You can bring him in if you absolutely need him. I'd even have the same sort of argument for, towards the back end of the year, especially if Manly are close to finals, like for Turbo. Like, just put Lehigh at fullback for a couple of those games against the lower sides and have Turbo in jersey 18 if you really need him. I think that could be a little bit of a strategy there for either side. But, yeah, for the Broncos in particular, I think you're bang on. I think that could be a real nice little tactic for them to keep some of these guys fit and ensure that they are sweet and good to go for finals. What are your thoughts? Do you reckon that's how this 18-19 jersey is going to be used for Brisbane?
I don't have faith in it. I think it'll end up going to probably an outside back and a half. I don't think it'll be Ben Hunt. I think he'll be in the 14 jersey and he'll likely come on and play a little bit of 9, maybe even a little bit of lock. However, that is definitely what I would be doing with Ben Hunt.
I think for across a lot of sides as well, and especially during the Origin period now, like you don't really necessarily have to rest your Origin players for the game after as well, or the game beforehand. You could have them in jersey 18 or 19, and if you need them to play, you can bring them in. It's going to be interesting to see how this is used. It's going to be a big change of the game. I'm really keen to see how it sort of works, especially for Brisbane if they do go down that route. The Tigers, the West Tigers, what is their biggest question heading into this year?
I think it's Adam Doueihi at 7 and how much time you give Adam Doueihi, because I've always been of the opinion that Dewey's a gun player. I just have no idea what his best position is, and I don't think it's going to be 7. I don't think he provides that structure that the Tigers need. He played a few good games there. But yeah, I think it's how long you give Doueihi in the 7 jersey.
I do tend to agree. I like it though. I think that again, it sort of suits the structure of their side. Doueihi played well at 7 last year. Latu Fainu, I'm just not too sure about, like what the direction is for him, what they're going to go for, because he was one of the game's better your number 6s when he signed with the West Tigers, and now he's playing 13 for them and off the bench. It will look like for this year. So I guess what the side looks like from that standpoint will be really interesting. And how long they do give Adam Doueihi, I totally agree. I'm more concerned, more so than Doueihi, about Api Coruscant. I think that he looked really banged up playing 80-minute games towards the back end of the year. Even at the start and midpoints of the season, if he was playing longer than 60 minutes, he looked super fatigued. I think the older that he gets, you've sort of got to limit his minutes. And I've said this openly on the podcast before already, but I think that he probably moves into 14, similar to what they did with him at Penrith. And then maybe a Tristan Hope or a Jarrod Hayward start the game at 9. Probably Jarrod Hayward towards the back end of the year. But certainly for the start of the year, maybe a Tristan Hope. But I'd probably be looking at Api Coruscant's minutes and maybe, bringing him off the bench around tired forwards and having him making a real impact there rather than him playing the first 70 odd minutes and him just getting fatigued and potentially leading to a couple of injuries throughout the year. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Appy certainly is past his 80-minute days. I think if he absolutely has to, he probably can. But I think it's probably ideal for the Tigers to have kind of that nine on the bench. Whether that ends up being Latu when he's fit, maybe comes on, plays a little bit of nine, I'm not sure. If it's between Hope and Hayward, I'm going to stick to my guns here and say they're not competing for a premiership. So I would probably be looking to get Hayward in there. He's one of the games, he probably is the game's best up and coming nine. Just a matter of how he is defensively. I'm not too sure about it. If defensively he's still, growing into his body and stuff, maybe it is a Tristan Hope. The Tigers would know that better than me. But from what I saw in trials, I would probably be going Hayward in that 14 jersey.
He did carve up against the Roosters, didn't he? Looked very, very good. So, it'll be interesting to see what they do, but I certainly think that Appy's minutes need to go down a little bit. Mate, we've got two teams to go. The first one is the Dogs. What is the Bulldogs' biggest question mark heading into season 2026?
To me, it's Lachlan Galvin. It's got to be Galvin. Again, I think they lack that structure in the halves. I don't think they have an out-and-out 7. I think Galvin's definitely a 6. I think Burton's a 6 or maybe even a centre. So I'm not sure what they do in the 7 jersey. I know Sean O'Sullivan looked good in the halves, but I think he's long odds to start when they're fully healthy. Yeah, I think the big question here is how Galvin's going to adapt into that 7 role.
I'll tell you what, after watching the trials the other day, I don't think Galvin will develop in that 7 role. I think it'll be SOS at 7 with Galvin at 6, and I think Burton's probably going to move into the centres. Just off watching even Burton the other day, I think that Burton's put on a couple of kgs as well to handle centre a little bit more. I even think there's an opportunity, or not even an opportunity, I think there's a chance that Burton ends up at 13. Just with the size that he's put on, I think as well, if you want to develop Woods a little bit later in the year, depending on how mathematically they're looking to get into the 8 or into finals, I think that Burton might be moving into 13. And I also think that if your plan is to move Burton on at the end of the year, then I probably would be happy to move Burton around into the centres or into 13 to accommodate for some of these other guys. And my mail is as well that Sean O'Sullivan's had an absolute master preseason, and he's probably looked the best out of them all, other than Galvin, who's obviously won all the fitness tests. When it's come to actually their scrimmages and their opposed sessions, Sean O'Sullivan's been carving up. So I think SOS will get the 7 jersey. I think you'll see Galvin move to 6. And I think that will probably see the Dogs wait a little bit with Mitch Woods. And I sort of get that vibe as well from Willie Mason. He was talking on Levels the other day and talking about Gus and how he does generally like to give these guys a little bit more time. So I think that we'll see that happen with Mitch Woods this year, most likely. And I think we will see a halves pairing of SOS and Galvin. What are your thoughts?
I think that would be preferable, but I don't know. I just don't see it happening. I think you're right. If the plan is to move Matt Burton on, or even if it's not to move Matt Burton on, I still think Galvin in that 6 jersey is where he's going to end up playing his best football. People forget he's only in his 2nd year. It'll be his 3rd year this year. When it comes to Sean O'Sullivan against Mitchell Woods, I agree. At the moment, Sean O'Sullivan, probably the better player, better for structure, but I don't know. I just think getting Mitch Woods in as soon as possible, letting him develop is probably what's going to be best. Let him develop next to Galvin, because to me, Gus has built the Bulldogs very similar to how he built Penrith. They just don't have that Nathan Cleary to lead them around the park. They don't have that elite number 7. So in my head, the sooner you get Mitch Woods in, the sooner you get that number 7 that can take you to compete for a premiership.
I actually disagree. And the only reason I disagree is because watching Mitch Woods in New South Wales Cup and in the lower grades, he looks a lot more like a 6, the way that he plays. He runs really, really well. He's a lot more of an attacking player. I feel like Sean O'Sullivan, at least for the short term, who can have him in there, develop Mitch Woods more into that 7 style of play, and then bring him in with Galvin at 6, maybe in a year or two's time. Again, Mitch Woods is still 19, 20 years old. You still got plenty of time to work on him, so that's probably what I'd be doing, to be fair. And Sean O'Sullivan, as I said, has had a huge preseason, so I think that he'll end up getting the 7 jersey, potentially even in Vegas as well. Alrighty, the last team, the Sharkies. Mate, question marks around the Sharks. I think the biggest one is probably Will Kennedy and what the future is for Will Kennedy. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've been a big critic on Will Kennedy. I don't think he's a bad fullback by any means. I just think with the makeup of this Sharks team, they're very limited without having a gun fullback. I think that's what they need to look for. I was so excited about Cade Dykes coming through. He unfortunately had a few injuries. Been really excited about Ison, was supposed to play in the trial yesterday. Didn't end up happening, but yeah, I think the Sharks need to figure out what they're going to do there at fullback.
I think Liam Myson did pick up a little bit of an injury, so I think that's why he missed out. So, yeah, it will be really interesting to see who they throw at fullback there. I threw this question to Brandon Savage last night, and it threw him off a little bit, and I want to throw the same question to you. Let's say that Melbourne pull out for Lomax. Would you trade Jesse Ramian to Parramatta to get Lomax and bring him in at right centre if it was available and it was an option?
Yes, I would.
I think that's probably what they need. That I think the big thing around it's not really so much Will Kennedy at fullback. It's just that they need another strike player, and I feel like Lomax can be that guy. Whether you want to put him at fullback or whether you want to put him in the centres, I think that Lomax at right centre. Ramian's only getting older. I feel like Lomax and Katoa, Nikora and Hines for a right edge would be absolutely insane. And I think that Ramian is on that, 450, 500. So similar sort of price range to what Lomax was on at Parramatta. So I think they can definitely make it work. That would be the smoky option for me. If Lomax was to end up anywhere other than Melbourne, it'd probably be the Sharks. And it would probably be for Jesse Ramian. We'll have to wait and see. But maybe that's what, maybe a little play behind the scenes and we might see the Sharks land Lomax. But if they don't, I certainly think it's not so much around Will Kennedy. I think it's more that they need another strike player in there. Maybe Liam Myson does come in the first couple games if they just need that other strike weapon. And Will Kennedy maybe moves into jersey 18, 19. Or maybe they have Ison starting the year in jersey 18 and 19. And, mid-game if they want to make an adjustment or they want to bring someone on with a bit more leg speed and a bit more X factor, maybe they make that switch as an interchange instead of using a 14 because we know that the Sharks generally like to run with a 4-forward bench anyway, so you could use him as a 14, a little bit Liam Ison. But yeah, certainly the biggest question probably around Will Kennedy. What other question marks, I guess, are there with the Sharkies?
I don't know who's going to put their hand up to be the leader of this Sharks side because there's a lot of teams I go through and I go, yep, game's on the line, ball's going to this player's hands. I don't know whether the leader of this side is Phil Blake, whether it's Hines, whether it's Trindle, whether it's going to be Brayley stepping up. I just think they need someone to almost just step up as that leader because there's kind of just a few there at the moment. And I'm not sure which one that is.
Judging off the Indigenous All-Stars game, I think it will probably be Hines. I think he had a huge game in there. He did have a big game last year, and then obviously the Sharks are pretty up and down and managed to fight their way into the top 8 and top 4 last year. I think it will be Hines. We'll have to wait and see. I think Will Kennedy is probably safe for the moment at fullback, but certainly if they need a bit of strike power, they have the opportunity, since they don't usually use a utility, to maybe run with an Ison or someone in that jersey 18 or 19 and then bring them in if there are any injuries and whatnot as well. Mate, thanks for coming on again. Obviously got through that. It was a bit of a slugfest there. Good little power hour, getting through all of the biggest questions around every single team. Mate, just a little bit of a question, I guess, to throw you under the spot. What's your grand final looking like?
I reckon the Roosters will be there. I've got faith in them, as much as I hate to say it, as that's my family's team and I'm a Manly supporter. So I hate to say the Roosters are going to be there, but I think they will. And I reckon they'll be up against the Penrith Panthers.
All right. Well, there you go. That's Jarrod's prediction there. Let us know what you're thinking about Jarrod's prediction in the comment section below. Also, about any of our thoughts from today, our biggest questions regarding every single NRL team. Let us know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. The Sportshed TV charity match is on 22nd of February. It's this Sunday, so in the next couple of days. If you haven't bought your tickets already, make sure to buy your tickets before they sell out. It's going to be a great day. Obviously, food carts and Parramatta League's trials as well beforehand. And I think Now, this hasn't been announced yet, but it will probably be announced by the time this video comes out. Kickoff is at 2 p.m. Kickoff will be at 2 p.m. The game should wrap up around 3 o'clock because I know that there's a trial game on for the NRL on that day at around 4 o'clock. So kickoff should be at 2 p.m. Pending everything goes to plan, and then finish around 3, maybe just after 3 o'clock. So there you go. Jarrod, you going to be there on the day?
I should be, yeah. I'm planning to. Got my tickets, so if all goes well, I'll be there.
Who are you looking forward to most to watch play?
It's got to be you.
Oh, thanks, mate.
What position are you in?
I'm probably going to be playing front row off the bench. Probably front row off the bench.
Big impact, stencil, any run from you then.
Who do you reckon I should target from the other side?
Is JC on your team?
Nah, JC's playing for Goanna.
Straight at him.
All right, perfect.
Straight at JC.
Perfect. JC coming for you, mate. All right, there you go, guys. Subscribe to the YouTube. Become a part of the Big LEZ'S League community. We'll see you guys in the next one.